welcome all of you to the session this morning. The major issue that we're looking at is how do we enable students who are in the early stages of learning English, or students who have missed out on schooling because of refugee experiences, being in a refugee camp for a number of years. How do we enable them to get connected to literacy as quickly as possible? And the rationale behind this issue, or the centrality of this issue, is that there's a lot of research out there saying that when we look at factors that influence children's reading achievement and their overall academic development, the most potent factor is literacy engagement. And so if we've got a situation where students are seen as not being capable of getting into literacy until they have learned English to a certain level, then maybe 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, then we're holding students back from what they need to be doing in order to catch up academically. So ELL students, or English language learners, are often in a catch-22 situation. They don't have the language skills to necessarily understand classroom instruction at their grade level. They don't have the English language skills to read curriculum materials at their grade level. And yet if they're not doing that, they're likely to be falling behind in vocabulary acquisition, in grammatical acquisition, other aspects of language, compared to the students that they're trying to catch up with. And so what we've been working on collaboratively are ways of changing some of the classroom dynamics, changing some of the patterns of classroom interactions to enable students to get engaged with literacy as quickly as possible. And this ties in with the reality that students' prior knowledge is a major factor in terms of their ability to understand instruction. And if they can't relate, or if the teachers can't relate what's in the curriculum to students' prior knowledge, then there's going to be a mismatch there, and it's going to be much harder for students to follow instruction and to get on the trajectory they need to catch up. Well, if students' prior knowledge is encoded in their first language, that means their first language is related to their overall learning of English and content. And so we've been exploring ways of helping students to use their first language as a cognitive tool to enable them to get into the curriculum as a cognitive tool that acts as a stepping stone to it. The technology is changing rapidly, and as the technology changes, literacy changes. And so the traditional notion of literacy is reading and writing skills in the dominant language. It has shifted dramatically as a result of these two factors. So the Multiliteracies Project looked at some of those issues. And in the work that we did in the Toronto area with several school boards, we looked at encouraging students to use their first language as a tool for thinking. This is just one example of a book that students wrote, in this case in both Urdu and English. We have a handout which we'll pass out later on with all of these websites. Multiliteracy's pedagogy enables students to construct knowledge, create literature and art, and act in social realities through dialogue and critical inquiry. Again, one of the things that we will try and emphasize is that newcomer students can engage with these higher level cognitive skills. And again, that's challenging the common assumption that they need to know the language before they can do this. And finally, Multiliteracy's pedagogy employs a variety of technological tools to support students' construction of knowledge, literature and art, and the presentation of this intellectual work to multiple audiences through the creation of various kinds of texts, broadly understood. And these texts express students' identity. But the idea here is that if we can organize classroom interactions in such a way that students are enabled to invest their identities in the creation of something that they're proud of, that they can showcase to others, to their parents, to their peers, to their teachers, to people like us from the university, then that's affirming their identities. That's giving a very different set of images of who they are to the way they're often positioned in the classroom as the ESL student, or the kid who doesn't know English. But when we look at the importance of literacy engagement, there's a huge amount of research involving hundreds of thousands of students from work that's been carried out internationally by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, showing that literacy engagement is the strongest predictor of reading achievement among 15-year-old students. It's a stronger predictor even than socioeconomic status. And whenever educational researchers find anything that beats out socioeconomic status, they feel they're onto something. So literacy engagement is key. And so the issue that we're talking about on the panel is how can we accelerate that process, how can we maximize it so that the students will want to read, so the students will want to write, and feel that they have something to say.